Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the invisible foundation of construction. We're going to look closely at exactly how raw, untouched land is transformed long before a building even begins to rise. We walk into houses, offices, and skyscrapers every single day, right? But we're completely unaware of the immense preparation that makes those structures possible. So today, we're bringing that hidden world right up to the surface.
We usually only really notice buildings as they go up, like when the steel beams are finally placed or the brickwork is laid. But ask yourself, what critical engineering actually happens down in the dirt first? Because the truth is, the success or failure of literally any construction project is decided way before the first brick is ever laid.
Here's our blueprint for today. We'll quickly define what site works are, then dive into planning and excavating, cover grading and backfilling, discuss water and waste systems, and finally, finish the site. We're basically peeling back the layers, step by step, going from raw earth to a finished construction site.
Let's kick things off with Section 1. What are site works?
So, site works encompass all the prep activities done on a piece of land before, and sometimes during, the actual building phase. Think of things like digging the ground for a house or leveling the land for a brand new road. These steps are absolutely essential. Why? Because they make the land ready to build on. And more importantly, they're the exact reason buildings actually stay strong, stable, and safe for decades.
There's actually an elegantly simple way to understand this whole complex process, and it boils down to just 4 little words: clean, dig, level, and build. If you just keep that sequence in mind, you'll easily grasp the fundamental logic behind every single piece of heavy machinery and every measurement taken on a site. It's all about getting the groundwork right before the building goes up.
Moving right along to Section 2, planning and excavating.
It's fascinating how the highly technical initial planning phase naturally leads into the heavy excavation work. First, professionals conduct thorough site investigations and soil testing. They're checking things like the soil's load-bearing capacity and groundwater levels. Then, once the science actually confirms the ground is ready, the heavy machinery rolls in for site clearing and excavation, digging out trenches and dewatering the area. It's really a perfect marriage of precise science and heavy labor.
Now, before any of that serious digging begins, we have layout and planning. This involves surveyors carefully measuring the land and using physical markers to designate exactly where the structure is going to sit. And why is this so absolutely critical? Well, because it prevents incredibly costly mistakes down the line, ensuring the building is placed in the exact right spot according to the architectural plans. You definitely do not want to get this part wrong.
Just think about the sheer depth of excavation required to make a building safe. Up above ground, you have the finished building, the masonry, the beams, the slab. But underneath, wow, crews have to dig out massive amounts of earth, sometimes moving hundreds of tons of dirt, just to safely place those huge concrete footings deep into the compacted soil. You have setting out lines, deep excavation trenches, and column starters rising up from the dirt. It really puts into perspective just how much of a building is actually buried underground just to prepare a safe space for the foundation.
All right, let's head into Section 3, grading and backfilling.
So, grading is simply the process of leveling or purposefully shaping the land. Imagine taking a super uneven, lumpy yard and flattening it out, or smoothing out bumpy ground to lay down a nice, flat road. By shaping the land, grading makes the actual construction process way easier. And crucially, it strictly prevents dangerous water pooling that could otherwise completely erode a foundation over time.
Grading is actually a highly structured 9-step process that brings total order to chaotic, raw earth. It kicks off with an initial site inspection using surveying instruments to measure angles and elevations. Then it moves through clearing trees and removing roots, which is a process known as grubbing. After running some soil density tests, the bulldozers are brought in for the rough grading. From there, smaller, more precise equipment is used for final grading to ensure a perfectly smooth surface. That's followed by installing drainage, rolling the soil for compaction, and finally, a strict final inspection to ensure every spec is met. It is an incredibly rigorous workflow.
There's a real push and pull relationship here between excavation and backfilling. First, obviously, we excavate. We dig the ground out to create space for foundations and massive pipes. But we can't exactly leave those deep trenches wide open, right? And that's where backfilling comes in. This is the process of putting the soil back in after the digging and building are wrapped up. We fill the empty space around the newly built foundation and carefully cover the pipes. This step is absolutely vital because it supports those underground structures and keeps the entire site totally stable.
Which brings us to Section 4,
Water and waste management.
Make no mistake, water is the absolute enemy of a solid foundation, so we really have to remove it efficiently. This involves installing deep drains around houses and setting up gutters to carry rainwater safely away from the site. On top of that, we have to manage the wastewater. This means installing septic tanks for individual rural homes or connecting complex networks of sewer pipes in urban city environments. Honestly, these invisible underground systems are the true unsung heroes of our living spaces.
If we were to just skip these steps, well, we'd invariably invite disasters. We're talking severe structural flooding and massive health hazards. But by doing the work and installing proper drainage and waste systems up front, we don't just protect the structural integrity of the building itself, we also keep the surrounding environment clean and literally protect the overall health of the people who will eventually live or work there. It's a win-win.
And finally, we arrive at Section 5, finishing the site.
This is the fun part. This is where the site truly becomes usable and, frankly, beautiful. We add driveways to provide a clear, organized path for vehicles. Then comes the landscaping, designing the outdoor spaces by planting grass, bringing in trees, and creating lush gardens. And this doesn't just drastically improve the visual appearance of the property, it actually helps the natural environment recover from the construction phase and seamlessly integrate with the brand new structure.
So if you take away literally anything from our explainer today, just remember our simple blueprint for getting a site ready for construction. First, you clean the site of debris and run your soil tests. Then, you dig for your excavation and deep footings. After that, you level the ground through grading and backfilling. And only then are you actually ready to build.
I don't know about you, but it really leaves me with a newfound respect for the dirt beneath our feet. We spend our lives walking into these enclosed, finished spaces, rarely even thinking about the massive efforts buried right below us. It kind of makes you wonder just how much invisible engineering, compacted soil, and carefully graded drainage is silently holding up the very room you're sitting in right now. Think about that the next time you step into a new building.